Ladies, gentlemen, and destined ones of all ages, it's time for a particularly solid build in Black Myth Wukong, a rock-solid build. This is quite simply a build based around one of my favorite personal spells in the game, Rock Solid. This won't create a scenario that one-hits bosses for like 16,000 damage or something like that, but it gives you as frequent uses of Rock Solid as reasonably feasible, and Rock Solid itself is essentially a spell that acts as a parry, blocking and deflecting an attack if timed correctly. Against most enemies, with the exceptions of some particularly larger attacks or certain bosses that exist with spell counters, which are a thing in the game, it will just be a full flinch if used properly, like a massive flinch that follows this and lets you get a bunch of free hits. With all the things in play that we use, the cooldown goes down to around 5 to 10 seconds on average, and that means that you can get the parry super frequently if you're good with it. And on top of the flinch, it also gives you a damage boost to the follow-up attack. It gives you a bunch of focus when you use it successfully, and one of my favorite parts of this is in a full rock solid setup like we've got here, it is actually mana positive, meaning with everything active, if you use rock solid and trigger it successfully, you will gain mana rather than the spell costing anything at all. This pushes it to be the basis of what you could consider to be the longest lasting build, because outside of Spellbinder, of course, which just lasts until death, most spell-based builds can only last as long as your mana bar exists for. But if you have a way to actively regain mana without a limit on the amount of uses of it, you can actually extend your ability to use powerful things like a pluck of many for the squad of duplicates more times than throughout a fight than you could without this. And this is massive for either things like some of the harder boss fights in the game with massive health bars and a large number of phases, or even heading into things like New Game Plus cycles, where in each cycle the bosses just gain more health, and so the fights are just longer naturally, really. All that said, let's dive into all of the equipment that we use to make this happen: the weapon, the vessel, the spirit, the armor set, the curios, and the gourd, as well as how to get all of them. And then we'll talk about your relic choices and also the important upgrades to get within the skill tree itself. It's also worth mentioning that the vast majority of this build is achievable in the base game in your first playthrough, so before New Game Plus. The New Game Plus weapons, of course, do make it even better, as they tend to do for most builds. First up then, let's talk about your weapon, and the best one in the game for this, and many builds honestly, is the Dark Iron Staff. This is unlockable after beating the secret area of Chapter 5 in New Game Plus. This transfers your defense stat into an attack bonus, and if you are wearing a full mythical grade armor set, which you will definitely be able to do by this point of New Game Plus, this will simply give you more attack bonus than pretty much any other staff outside of creating very specific synergies like a thunder damage setup using the Stormflash Longstaff. However, the best one for this in the base game is actually the Jingu Bang in Chapter 6. You just get this as part of the story. Specifically, this is the best one for this because it removes the depreciating effect from the 4th focus point charge, which lets you get it easier, and the bulk of the actual damage in this build comes from light attack combos generally between rock solid, but obviously anytime we get 4 focus points built up, we launch off and immobilize and do a gigantic hit with the damage bonus using our heavy attack. So the more of these that we can do throughout a fight, the better really. The middle ground here is once you've unlocked the Fubon Staff, which is more like mid New Game Plus. This just has great crit on it as a base, which is the main reason that I'd recommend it, but it also has healing when you spend your focus points, and it also shoots out some extra spines when you use a 4 focus point attack too, which is pretty hefty, and it really just sort of smooths out and enhances the damage over the course of a fight, better than the Jingu Bang Staff does, and better than any other staff until you reach the Dark Iron Staff, of course, which is just perfect. Then next up, we have the vessel that you'd want to use for this, and the Weaver's Needle is generally, as per usual, the best one, with the passive equip effect of bonus critical hit chance and crit damage too. This comes from the final boss of Chapter 4's secret area. Then we have the Spirit that we use for this too, and this is pretty much just going to be the non-able from the optional boss of the same name in Chapter 3, mostly because the passive equip effect is a bit of attack, a pile of crit chance, which is important, and crit damage too, which is also very valuable. As well, while I don't use it too much here in the footage so I can keep showing off rock solid as much as possible, the active effect of the non-able spirit does do a fair amount of damage, and can be used as a combo extender after your light attack combo finisher, so it is quite good in that sense as well. On top of that, the main negative of the spirit, which is a reduction of your maximum mana, doesn't negatively affect us too badly because we just actively actually regain mana by using Rock Solid properly, so our maximum mana isn't a big thing that matters for us. Past that then we come to the armor set itself, which is going to be the Iron set, which mostly unlocks from defeating the Blacksmith's Challenge effect in the Zodiac Village, but does also require a material from the final boss of the secret area in Chapter 4 to make the whole set. The gloves have a unique effect, boosting the damage of the attack that you do after using Rock Solid. The 2 set gives you a massive focus increase on successful Rock Solid parries, and then the 4 set reduces the cooldown of the spell by a large amount when it is used successfully. There are other ways to build, including Rock Solid as a spell, but this is the one that really emphasizes it as its sort of own thing and leans into it hard, and I really enjoy just this way of playing around it. Then we have our curios for this, the Amber Prayer Beads from the main path of Chapter 5, which just gives you a bunch of extra focus generation, which just leads to the ability to use more heavies over a fight and thus get more damage. The Cat Eye Beads are bonus crit chance, and we have great crit damage and attack frequently, so crit chance is one of the best increases that we can get, smoothing out our damage a little bit more. I've got 2 of these in this build just because I have the slots and I'm in New Game Plus, so I have a second one. Then we have the Tiger Tally Curio from the first boss of the Chapter 2 secret area. This one is fantastic. It boosts your damage after successive light attack hits. Essentially, hitting with light attack combo slowly raises all damage that you do for a short period afterwards. And with our general gameplay loop being light attack combo into Rock Solid when appropriate, this can apply its damage boost to the attack after a Rock Solid and boost the damage of that by a fair bit. Then finally, for our equipment, we of course also have our gourd. The Supreme Gourd is fantastic, honestly, just the full upgraded basic gourd for maximum drink uses per rest, and in here we have the Long Bomb, mostly just because it has 4 soak slots, but this does also boost attack damage occasionally, with the best use of it in our setup being before you launch off a 4-point heavy, just drink your gourd first. For soaks, the Bee Mountain Zone gives you a chance to not consume gourd uses when using the gourd, which is just a fantastic upgrade in general. The Copper Pill makes Rock Solid cost no mana for a short duration after drinking from the gourd, and this is part of our mana positive combo, specifically going out of our way to drink when Rock Solid comes off cooldown, and then use Rock Solid with this effect active to gain mana from our other effects, with Bee Mountain Stone as well for chance to not consume gourd uses, and the Supreme Gourd in general having a high amount of uses. You can do this quite consistently without running out of healing as well. Then we also have the Steel Ginseng Soak for focus gained when drinking, just as a bit of a bonus too, and the Tiger Relic for crit chance gained after drinking as well. With that then we move on to the relics and the skill tree for the build, starting off then with the Craving Eyes Relic. We have Keen Insight, of course, for a large amount of increased critical hit damage, which is very useful, and then we also just have Opportune Watcher as your second priority, because this increases the amount of focus that you get on consecutive light attack hits, which of course is the bread and butter of the build, as we've already explained, so that is very useful. For Fuming Ears, you want Sound as a Bell, which actually does affect Rock Solid. It does narrow the window of the deflection, but it gives you mana returned. This is part of our actual mana positive combo, because drinking from the gourd makes Rock Solid cost no mana in the first place, but this still gives you a mana cost refund if you have this here and you do a successful deflection. We also then, for second priority, take Whistling Wind, just for the attack increase and the fact that that will just happen during a fight sort of naturally. The main one here in Hubris Nose is Lingering Aroma for the damage bonus after a short time after casting a spell. This of course applies to the attack that follows Rock Solid, so it just adds to our synergies, and it also will apply to our 4-point heavies being used right after applying Immobilize too. Then we just take Hold Breath for increasing the dodge of its ability duration, just because more iframes is more iframes. Past that is going to be Personal Choice up until the final one here in Freed Mind, and this is honestly also sort of personal choice, but it more depends on how the fight is going. For longer boss fights, you will want to have Elegance in Simplicity. This will increase your light attack damage just as a whole, and we do lots of light attack damage. However, Unified Minds will make the duplicates from a Pluck of Many copy your powerful attacks, like your light attack finishers, which we do a fair amount of, and your big heavy attacks, which we'll be doing some of too. The main difference here is that Unified Minds gives you a lot more bursty damage, as this will increase your damage significantly while a Pluck of Many is active. However, in the cooldowns between a Pluck of Many, which are quite long, even if we are mana positive so we can summon it multiple times, in the cooldowns between it, you'll just have lower damage than you would if you just used Elegance and Simplicity. So it's basically a personal choice based on whether you want more burst or not, and how long you see the fight going. Personally, I just like increasing the light attack damage. I think it's just sort of fun. Then we have our skill tree choices, and these are relatively straightforward for this too. For the strand section, we're going to be taking all of the upgrades for a Pluck of Many, giving duplicates more damage, more health, more of themselves as well. You can spawn more duplicates with this, and also making them able to use some of our spells, depending on what you have equipped, including Rock Solid itself, of course, to cause bonus flinches too. Then in Alteration, we are of course going to be grabbing just all of the Rock Solid upgrades here. This does things like reducing the cooldown of the effect, giving you focus when it's successful, heal, damage reduction, and also giving you attack damage to your light attack starter after a successful deflection, and more importantly, it gives you mana back on a successful deflection too, which again adds to the way that our spell becomes mana positive with the gourd use. Then for Immobilize, we're again going to be taking all the upgrades, though the most important one is simply Crash to increase the damage done to enemies that are immobilized in the first place, and we mostly just use this to emphasize the damage of our 4 focus point heavy attacks and capitalize on this bonus. For Staff Stance, this is mostly personal choice, honestly, but I really sort of like Thrust Dance with this, specifically for the Deadly Dance node at the bottom here, which lets you fire off a 4-point focus heavy super quickly after doing a roll. This is still not quite quick enough to benefit from the rock solid bonus damage from the armor, so we can't quite combo that together, but it makes just using a 4-point heavy attack more comfortable in general, which fits into what we want for this build, which is comfort and a feeling of just power, honestly. Then finally in the foundation section, we're going to be grabbing some pretty standard stuff, stamina upgrades to help manage stamina and make your dodges better, as well as letting us keep our point in the light attack combo string as we dodge. Then we want the full left side of the martial arts section because it's just dedicated to light attacks, and we're going to be doing a hell of a lot of light attacks and the light attack combo as a whole. Then finally for the survival area, you just want to grab any stat boost that makes sense with your remaining points. The best ones for offense, of course, being crit chance as well as crit damage, and then finally just straight up attack, obviously. That just about does it for actually putting the build together then, so let's talk about how to play it. Though this one is relatively straightforward compared to a lot of the ones we've covered. You want to start a fight with your duplicates generally by using a pluck of many at the beginning. Then drink your gourd and use the light attack combo on the boss until the opportunity presents itself to use rock solid on an attack and get the parry. If you do this correctly, it will flinch them and give you a damage bonus, which lets you have a bunch of damage. It will give you a pile of focus for the deflection, and it will also give you mana back. Then you want to just continue light attacking after this. If you happen to reach 4 focus points while doing this, you want to drink from your gourd, use Immobilize on the boss, and then use your heavy attack. If you're using Thrust Dance, you can do this quickly by just pressing the roll button and then using heavy to launch without the full animation. Repeat this general gameplay loop and bosses will die exceedingly quickly. In fact, with the full setup in play, I was rarely allowed to even do more than 2 rock solids against a boss before they just sort of died from the general damage. But of course, this again scales extremely well to healthier bosses because of the way that it works, bosses with extra phases, or deeper new game plus runs as well. That's it for today then, everyone. A build focused around rock solid, the spell that essentially acts as a parry in Black Myth Wukong. I love playing this way personally. I adore the satisfaction of a successful rock solid, and building around it as a spell and a focal point of your setup makes it just that much more meaningful when you execute it correctly. I hope you all enjoyed this, and then let me know in the comments below if there's any other playstyle or even just a spell or a spirit skill or anything like that you might like to see us make a full build out of. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.